So, it turns out that 2D side-scroller combat was a little bit more complicated than I first thought. Hello there, and welcome to another Sanctity Devlog, where I talk about the development of my solo indie game, Sanctity, a minimalist pixel art action RPG inspired by Nier and Devil May Cry. Today, I wanted to talk to you about the highs and the lows of creating a combat system in a 2D game, and then also making that combat system expandable to allow for Devil May Cry style combos as well. Now, for those who don't know, Sanctity is being developed in Unreal Engine 5, which is generally not the first choice for 2D games. Most 2D game developers will go for Unity, or more recently Godot, and that's because those two engines actually have specific modes for 2D development that are still supported by the engine's creators. Unreal Engine does not. It has Paper2D, but support for Paper2D by Epic Games has basically been non-existent for quite some time now. So much so that the community ended up developing PaperZD as a way to extend Paper2D's functionality, but we'll get to that soon enough. Firstly, let's start with Paper2D and my attempts to build a combat system within that. So the way Paper2D works is it relies on flipbooks. Flipbooks are a type of asset that combines sprites together to create an animation, basically living up to the name flipbook perfectly. When creating a character with Paper2D, you set the default sprite to be, for example, an idle animation flipbook, and go from there. Then, to make the combat system, you have to tell Unreal to switch the idle flipbook with an attack flipbook when the attack button is pressed. This will replace the current idle animation flipbook with the attack animation flipbook. Easy, right? Well, yes, that part is. But then you need to let Unreal Engine know to switch back to the idle flipbook when the animation is done. To do this, I used an isAttacking boolean that was set to true when the attack button was pressed. But to switch back, I had to create a horrible chain of branches to check which attack animation was playing, and then, depending on which one it was, check what frame of the animation it was on. When the end frame for a specific animation was reached, the isAttacking boolean would switch back to false, and the flipbook would change back to the idle one. This worked fine, I guess, when I only had 3 attacks. But I quickly realised just how limiting this was and how messy it would end up making the code of the game as I started adding more attacks. For example, similar checks had to be made for when the character was walking, running, jumping, dashing, falling, basically any type of movement that required a different animation to play than the idle one. So I took a step back and I looked at PaperZD that we mentioned earlier. PaperZD's main focus as an extension of Paper2D is to allow for animation graphs and animation notify blueprints. Basically, it tries to replicate the way Unreal Engine handles 3D animation systems so that they work in 2D setups. This sounded perfect. And it was. Thanks to Paper2D, I was able to make an animation graph for Aldreda, the main character, that contains 2 state machines, locomotion and combat. Now, for those of you who have used Unreal Engine for 3D animations, the idea of state machines and animation graphs, just the norm really. But for 2D it's a godsend. With this new setup, when an attack button is pressed, depending on whether it's held or whether the character's in the air, for example, a different gameplay tag is activated. Then the animation graph will register that the gameplay tag has been activated and switch from the locomotion state machine to the combat state machine. Then, in the combat state machine, the animation graph uses the gameplay tag that was activated to determine which branch of the combo system to go down and which leaf of the tree, as it were, to use. This will automatically switch the flipbook of the character to the corresponding attack flipbook. At that point, once again thanks to the extra blueprint nodes that PaperZD provides, when the flipbook has finished playing, it will automatically run the next check through just one node rather than one for each flipbook state. The benefit of being able to run this with a much cleaner code and through the animation graph is that I'm able to expand upon the combat system as much as I want. So now we can have multiple different attack sequences depending on the pattern of the light and heavy attack button presses. This state machine also works with locomotion too, meaning that all checks and all flipbook changes are handled within the animation graph in a clean and easy to follow manner. As such, I'm able to build new locomotion types and animations quickly and easily, without a horrendous number of if this then that checks one after another. And the final benefit of PaperZD that I've utilised so far is the animation notify system for flipbooks. With 3D animations, you can use anim notifiers to play particle effects and sound effects at specific points in an animation, as well as make certain events or checks happen at specific points too. PaperZD replicates that for flipbook animations. So now we have sword swing sound effects playing at the right moment in a flipbook without the need for even more event tick based branch checks. And I've also just finished building a new damage system that runs hit detection for enemies during specific frames of those attack animation flipbooks. All of this combines to mean that we can now build a true character action game style combat system using 2D flipbooks far easier and cleaner than if I tried to continue brute forcing Paper 2D to do what I wanted it to do. As such, my next focus for development is adding in the next part of the combat system, which is a hit counter that will give you an attack boost depending on how many hits you manage to get within a certain amount of time, and also create animations for all of the new attacks that we can have. In short, the idea of a 2D pixel art style Devil May Cry combat system is well underway in terms of development, but I think that's where we'll leave this devlog for now. I'm going to go and get on with the hit counter system and the attack animations, but in the meantime, why not hit that like and subscribe so you can catch the next devlog. Ta-ta!